We are back on the board today for you guys for Apple stock here. Haven't been on the board for a little bit, so we got to back up and we're moving, so things are getting a little crazy for a while here. But Apple stock. So why I believe Apple stock is currently a buy October 2020. We're going to be going through the bull, the bear thesis, good things, bad things I think with Apple stock right now, why I am buying it, why I am bullish on it, and why you could possibly be bearish on it. So we're going to dive into that stuff. If you enjoy the content, think about subscribing. Let's talk about Apple stock. So one of my favorite things to look at for any company I ever buy is the financials. I think it's so important to know they have good balance sheets, they have good revenues, they have good growth, all that good stuff. They have cash for hard times. So let's look at one of the best financials in the business with Apple here. So financials. So the market cap on this bad boy is 2.13 trillion with a T. That is an absurd amount of value for a company. But it is Apple we're talking about, so it is justified, and we're going to try and justify this a little bit more when we look at the revenues that they have. So that is the market cap, which is absolutely straight bananas, yo. So that's pretty wild. They have a decent dividend of 0.7%, so that's okay, less than 1%, but you know, you're still building on to your Apple position. So for me, I always enable drips, so if I had 100 shares, you'd be getting, you'd have 100.7 shares, by the end if you were getting 0.7 for a dividend. So I like enabling drips. It just automatically kind of builds your position, which I really like. So at least it does pay a dividend, not a huge dividend, but still not too bad at all. So PE, this is one thing that I just gotta say, and this is why I couldn't go whole hog into Apple. I did buy a decent amount of shares for my portfolio, and I think it is a very safe stock to buy just in general, but I just can't get behind going whole hog into this one because the PE is quite high. So the PE is 37, which is quite high, and if you look historically, because maybe you're thinking, oh, well, it's always high. Well, let's just look last year or so. So right now, 10, 12, 20, it is at 37, which is very high. And then we have 6/30/20, which was 27, which is still kind of high. 3/31/20, which was 20. Now we're getting more in the ballpark. A price to earnings that I like is 15 or under, which for Apple stock, you're not going to see that within the last few years. You're probably not going to see that with Apple stock. I think years ago it was under 15, but for the last few years it has been above 15. And then 12/31/19, it was at 23. So how can we justify this PE of 37, which is so stinking high? So they have earnings on the 29th, and if they were to have a nice beat this quarter, then potentially that PE would come down because their earnings would be higher than expected. So their price to earnings would be better. But we will see on that. So COVID kind of did pump up the stock price quite a bit just because they had increased sales during COVID, which is another reason I really like this one, which we'll get into in a little bit here. So let's talk about how ridiculous this amount of cash is that they have. So they have 100 billion, what's that, Austin Powers? 100 billion, $557 million. This is how much a supervillain was asking for in a movie. So that's a lot of money. That is an absurd amount of money. You know how many companies you could just buy with the free cash that you have on hand? So Apple, by far, has the best balance sheet, in my opinion, of pretty much any company. They have so much cash. They have a huge market cap. Their PE I do not like, but based on just basic financials here, I do love just this cash in general, the balance sheet. There's no way they're going under with numbers like these. So let's go ahead and dive into revenue. So another thing I like to look at is revenue and earnings. So if a company is not making more revenue and making more earnings, how do you expect that investment to grow if the company is not growing itself? So another very valuable thing to look at is Apple's growth right now. So Apple's revenue from 2016, 215 billion, 2017, 229, 265, 260. So in the course of about 3 years, they were able to increase that by about 50 billion, which is great revenue-wise. And then earning-wise, they're also able to bring home another 10 billion revenue-wise. So the growth is getting bigger and bigger. In 2020, with COVID, it actually seemed that more people were spending more money on Apple products. So it does seem, year to date, they're actually going to beat these numbers quite handily. So they are increasing their revenue, increasing their earnings, which is something we need to look at when you're trying to justify a market cap so obscene as $2 trillion. So does this justify that $2 trillion market cap? It is hard to say, but they have crazy amounts of revenue and crazy amounts of earnings. I mean, they're earning $250 billion in 2019. And before that, even every single year. So that is an obscene amount of money that they are making revenue-wise and earning-wise. So what are all the bulls saying on this one? What are the bulls? Why I'm buying this stock, and I have been buying the stock for the last few weeks now. So why am I buying Apple? I love Apple stock, quite frankly. This is just a great, great staple in anybody's portfolio. I own Apple products. I love Apple products. Being a personal owner of Apple products, I would say once you buy it, you're pretty much locked in. I don't know a lot of people that have gotten the iPhone and then switched over to a different type of product. So I feel like the brand loyalty is there where people are not really going to leave Apple once they're with Apple. I also feel like it's COVID proof, which I am super duper scared of. I was a decently large owner of cruise line stocks before COVID hit, and that decimated me. So I don't want that to happen again for any of my positions if that were to happen again. So I love that this one's COVID proof, and they actually made more money during COVID because people were purchasing more and more Apple products, which is kind of wild. I think another huge home run potential, home run, wow, I think is 5G devices. So once we all move over to 5G, which is coming right down the pipe, I believe, and you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, you need to get a device that is compatible with 5G. So I think everybody's pretty much going to be getting new phones, probably a lot of new iPhones, and that's going to be a huge, huge source of revenue for my boy, Apple, the Appler. So I do believe that they're going to be selling tons and tons of new phones. And that's just part of their revenue too. You know, they sell a lot of different things, like people love their Macs, people love their iPads, people love all that stuff. New iPhones. So lately everybody's been pumped up about the new iPhone that's going to be released, and that could be a huge source of revenue for them in just kind of the short-term broad space right now is the new iPhone. So one of the main negatives I have with this one is just the valuation, the PE. It's so hard to get behind that PE right now. But I do think they're going to do well in earnings in the future. And even if the share price were to get just decimated, it's going to come back eventually, you know? And this one's a long-term buy for me. I'm not going to buy this one and flip it next week, even if I were up 20, 30%, 40%, whatever. I'm already up like 10% because I bought it right before the iPhone day or whatever. So I was really happy with that. But yeah, this is what I'm going to be trying to hold on to for quite a while. Let the drips run, let the position build. And I just really believe in Apple a lot. And I think it'll be a great, great staple. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. If you did, please think about subscribing. I like talking about my main positions, like Apple will hopefully be here someday. So hopefully you guys make some money and you take care.